Hey guys, Skinny here, and today I'm going to be doing my final video on the PTB, discussing my final thoughts on the Trickster before he hits live servers. I just uninstalled the PTB yesterday after having it installed for 4 days. It's probably the longest I've played on a PTB. Normally I play them for like 1 day, maybe the half of the next day at best, and then I uninstall it. But this one I was on right up until the point where the queue times got too long. Like, that's the only... If the queue times weren't terrible, I'd still be on it now until it closed. That's how much fun I've had with this killer. That being said, I've got quite a few points I would change and make to him before he hits live servers, because in his current state, he's just not viable. He's fun, he's really fun, and he's got an aesthetic that will make me want to play him. Even if he's like bottom tier garbage, I'll still play him quite frequently. But at the moment now, the way he is on the PTB, he's really not viable. But I've got a few changes I would potentially make to him. Not all of these, but like most of them would probably be what would be needed done. I think you can't have some of these changes. You can't have like both from this list that I've made through playing him, because it would just be broken. But you can maybe take one over the other. But with that out of the way, I'm gonna get started straight into the first change I would make to him, and that is make him 115 movement speed. The problem with him, the biggest problem with him at the moment, is that he is 110 movement speed. Which, it makes sense, he's a ranged killer, and all ranged killers in the game, excluding Clown, are 110 movement speed. The reason they are like that is because of their power being ranged. You know, to balance out the fact that they can hit you without even being remotely close to you, they're slowed down in their chase because they're not that critical on getting M1s. The problem is like Huntress, Deathslinger, these killers have lethality to their power. Their ranged power has lethality. You know, like Deathslinger can pull you in from miles away and get an easy M1. Huntress can hit a hatchet from ages away, and they all deal 1 health state of damage. But Trickster, he has to get 8 consecutive hits just to do 1 health state. And with the unpredictability of his recoil pattern, with the fact that his knives go straight, they don't like arc that much, they're pretty much dead on straight lines. It's just not viable to have him being 110. The way I've been playing Trickster that's been getting me the most value is by just running around like a normal M1 killer. But then when I get to places like windows or pallets where I know the survivors are going to be animation locked, if I'm too far away to get an M1 hitting, I'll pull my knives out and get maybe 2 or 3 knives in, and rinse and repeat this as they keep running the loop, and eventually I'll get a free health state out of them that I wouldn't have got M1ing. Now, that works, but the problem with that is you would be so much better off just getting 2 M1 hits in than you would be throwing 16 knives into someone. Like, just because you can't. But the problem is you can't M1 with him because he doesn't catch up. He's 110, so it takes him forever to catch up. So the first change I'd make to him is make him 115 movement speed, and then to balance this out, when he starts to aim his blades, then he gets slowed to 110. Because the way he is now on the PTB is he's 110 base, and then when you start aiming the blades, you actually slow down further, much like Huntress, who she's 110, and then when she aims, she slows really down. It's not as bad on Trickster. Trickster doesn't slow down that much. It's probably not a very big number, but you definitely feel that you move slower the second you pull the knives out, and that limits their usability even more, because you get to situations where you think, oh, I'm never going to get an M1 here, but I might get a couple knives in. Go to pull your knife out, and because of the slowdown, the survivor's already through the window and gone by the time you're in aiming distance. Like like aiming stance, it's just not good. So the first change I'd make, is making 115 when walking and doing normal M1 stuff, but then slow him to 110 when he starts to aim, just to balance that out. The next change I'd make is actually to bring down the amount of knives it takes to injure from 8 to 6. The reason I say 6 and not something lower like 4 is because I think 4 would be far too broken. The reason I'm going for 6 is I've noticed through playing him, like I said, the best time to use knives is when the survivors are animation locked, you know, vaulting windows, like going over pallets, that sort of thing. And when they're in these situations, if you time it right and your aim's good, you can get usually 2 or 3 knives in on them. If the knife counter was reduced to 4, that would literally be 1 window vault, 1 pallet vault, and then a lucky knife. That's broken. But 6 is a good balance. It's a good sort of... It's 2 loops, you know, you get 2 or 3 knives in at a window, they do it again, you get another 3 in, they're injured. That's balanced to me. 8 is just too much. I think 8 knives to injure, just to injure, not even to down, just to injure, is far too much, especially given the fact that his recoil pattern is unpredictable. It's hard to learn. Like, the problem with his recoil pattern is that it's like CSGO recoil. It doesn't just go up, it goes like wobbly left and right, and as well the way when he changes blades, obviously he throws with his left hand then his right hand back to back like in a kimbo. The problem with that is when you throw with the left, it does noticeably move slightly more left, and if you throw with the right, it throws more with the right, which makes sense. But the problem is you don't have control over which hand Trickster throws his blades with. It's just left, right, that's the pattern. It'll always start with the left, but then it'll always go left, right, and that messes with his recoil pattern, which is why I think 8 knives is far too much, because the fact you have to hit so many knives just to injure when it's already a nightmare to even hit a couple to begin with, just because of the recoil pattern. I think 6 would be way more balanced. 4 would be too much, but 6 would be a nice middle ground between those two where it would be good. And then maybe keep like that one add-on, was it Yumi's Murder, that like reduces the knife count by 1? I think that could either be reworked into something else or just work that into the base kit through this by making it 6 hits instead of 8. But yeah, the next change I would make is the laceration meter that comes with his power. I would make that not decay. I would instead change that to be like Deep Wounds, where it's an action that the survivors can perform to bring their laceration meter down. And the way I would work this is every time you get hit with a blade, that's 2 seconds added to the timer. So if he hits you with 5 blades, because this would be assuming the counter gets brought down to 6, but if he hits you with 5 blades, that's 10 seconds you have to spend to bring your laceration meter back to 0. And for every 2 seconds passed on that timer, you bring it down by 1. So what this would be is, you get hit with 5, it's a 10-second timer. You start to heal the laceration. 2 seconds go by, you go back down to 4. 4 seconds go by, you go back down to 3, and so on until you're at 0. That would then balance it so that it's long enough to keep the survivor occupied, to keep them out for a little bit, you know, so you're not just losing it the second you can't keep up the combo. But it's also balanced in a way that if they start mending their laceration and get to 9 seconds and you interrupt them, they're not still stuck at 1 hit. You know, they have pulled out the first 4, or they've still just got 1 in them. Something along those lines. I think this would be a lot better than having it just passively decay, because the problem with that is there's no point in throwing blades at someone if you're not going to commit the chase. The way the Trickster is currently is because the laceration meter ticks down when you're not keeping the combo up. There's no point in throwing blades at someone and then letting them go, because it'll just go away. You'll be doing nothing for yourself. You'll just be wasting knives. With this change, it's still kind of like that, but in a more balanced way, where if the survivors don't immediately remove the laceration, then you still benefit from it, and if they immediately remove it, well, it doesn't matter. It would just be a bit more balanced than having it passively tick down and decay. The final sort of big change that I decided to come up with is actually focusing in on his main event, like secondary power, I guess, if you want to call it that. This, I have two things with it. Either remove it entirely, because it is completely useless and doesn't really serve any other benefits from his like normal knives, or give it a serious overhaul. Now, the overhaul I would give the main event mode is make it like Oni's power. The way it is currently is you build it up by getting knife hits. But the thing I've noticed through playing the Trickster a lot on the PTB is most of the time, right as you get main event up, you've just downed a survivor. There's most of the scenarios where I'm down, when I'm getting main event, I've just downed someone, and there is no other survivors around me. The problem there then is that main event goes away after 4 seconds. You build it up, and then after like 4 seconds, the timer's gone. You can't use it anymore. It goes back to 0. But since you're always getting it as soon as you down someone, and it's such a situational power to begin with, there's very little uses to it. I think it would be much better if you could hold on to it and use it when it applies. Because think about it, if you have to look at it like it is Oni's power. Say, for example, Oni got his rage mode after getting 2 hits, and as soon as that bar was full, if you didn't use Oni's rage mode in the next 2 seconds, you lost it. You had to recharge again. That would be stupid. Imagine that. Now that's exactly how Trickster works. Trickster shouldn't have that. It's main event is too situational to be something that you get, and if you don't instantly use it, it's gone. It needs to be something that you're able to hold on to, and then when the right situation occurs, such as multiple survivors being in front of you, or you know, a scenario like where you can get value out of it, then you can use it, rather than it being something you earn up, unlock, and then instantly lose. It just doesn't make sense like that. But that's not the only change I'd make to it. I also think he should be able to break pallets and vault windows when using main event. Because the way it is currently is as soon as you trigger that main event mode, you can't do anything. You can't break pallets, can't vault windows, can't open lockers, can't pick survivors up. None of that. Completely gone. All you can do is throw knives. The problem with that is, if you're in a place like Shack, or you're on a certain loop, or a place where there's a god pallet, for like, imagine the new game where it's just all god pallets. If you activate main event, and a survivor throws a pallet that you're forced to break, otherwise you don't catch them, you're screwed. You can't break that pallet. One of the examples I noticed in a game I was actually in was at Shack. A survivor had just rescued from the basement. The gate was 99'd on the other side, and I thought, great, I've got main event up, I'll like do this and I'll get 2 or 3 of them. The thing is, they just ran to the pallet, dropped the pallet, and then I couldn't do anything. I knew that that's what they were going to do, so I didn't use my main event until after they'd thrown it and I'd broken it. But even then that didn't matter, because of the slowed movement speed and the fact I had to waste time breaking the pallet meant that I couldn't get any value out of main event. So I think you should be able to interact with things during main event. You know, you should be allowed to pick survivors up, break pallets, vault windows, because otherwise there's no point to using it. There's so much restrictions in place with the main event that you never want to use it. There's also a cooldown that happens at the end of main event. Not the animation, that makes sense to me. But there's a really long window at the end of main event where you can't throw knives for. If you still got knives left, you can't throw knives anymore at the end of main event. That shouldn't be a thing. I can kind of see why, and if they really are insistent on keeping that for balance reasons, they need to significantly reduce how long that cooldown is for. Because there were so many scenarios where I'd finish a main event, still have a few knives left, and need to use them, but I couldn't because the cooldown would just be extraordinarily long. It's so bad. And the final thing I will say for main event is the ammo counter. It says for main event you get infinite ammo, and you do if you hit 0. The problem is with main event as it is now, is it still takes from your ammo pool. If you had, let's say, 45 knives when you activate main event, and you start throwing those knives rapid fire, the time that the ammo count ticks down, you'll go down, and you'll reach 0. So then when you come out of main event, you have no knives. Which then further makes me not want to use main event, because I think, well, why would I want to go into an even more inaccurate rapid fire mode where I can't do anything if it's going to take away from my main ammo pool where I could just, you know, take it away anytime, not have infinite ammo but be more accurate. It just doesn't make sense to me that they say it's infinite ammo but then it takes from your normal ammo pool anyway. It's stupid to me. I think it shouldn't. Either that's a bug or it's an intended feature, and either way I think they should get rid of that. It shouldn't take from your base ammo pool. But that's all the changes I'd make to main event if they insist on keeping it. Because in my opinion, they should just get rid of it. There was no scenarios I found where I thought main event benefited me more than just normal knifing. Just normal using the knives. The only benefit to it is the fact that you have a slightly faster fire rate. But even then, that doesn't make that much of a difference. Like, at the end of the day, it actually probably hurts you more because it screws with your recoil. And it, like, makes it more likely that you're going to miss. You can't really. It's just stupid. And there is one more change that I've heard a lot of people mention that I want to bring up with the Trickster, and that is a lot of people have been saying they want to see the ricochet knives, the ones that bounce off things. They want to see that add-on made base kit. Personally, I'm divided about what I think of this. I think largely why people have been saying this is because that's the only add-on in the PTB that, like, makes his damage feel consistent. That add-on, if you pair it with Yumi's murder, makes it so that if you hit them with ricochet knives, it will only take 4 knives to down, which is broken, But I can see why people like that in the PTB, because it's the only add-on that does that. Because the problem I have with the Ricochet blades, yeah, they offer a bit more utility. You know, there's places like Shack Pallet where you can bounce it off somewhere and hit someone. I think I saw a video, I think I saw Tat do that to someone in a video recently where he bounced a knife off of the boxes at Shack Pallet and hit someone with it. There's utility where you can use the Ricochet knives to do stuff like that, but the problem I have with them as they are currently is they're unpredictable. You know, the Ricochet isn't consistent because the recoil with Trickster isn't consistent. I think a lot of my problems with Trickster so far is the fact that he doesn't have a learnable recoil. You know, Huntress, Deathslinger, their powers you can learn. You know, with significant playtime, you can learn the arc of a Huntress hatchet, how long you need to charge it to get it further, and stuff like that. With Trickster, there is no learning because his recoil pattern is unpredictable. You can master, like, you can practice the vertical recoil, you can get that in control, but that doesn't matter because the left-right sort of horizontal recoil will be all over the place. You know, no two times where you'll go to throw his knives will the recoil be the same. And that, to me, hinders his power massively, and it ties back into the Ricochet knives, because if you throw a knife at a corner expecting it to bounce off the corner into a survivor, and it does, and then you throw a second one in the same place without ever moving your mouse, well, beyond fixing the recoil, and then it doesn't bounce in the same way, that doesn't work to me. That it would be like if you threw Huntress's hatchet quickly one time, so you didn't hold it down, you just tapped it, and she threw it straight line, it arced a little bit, and it hit someone. And then the next time you did the exact same thing, only this time she didn't throw it at all, she just limp armed it and it just dropped at her feet. That's what it's like with Trickster's recoil pattern, is it's so unpredictable that you can't get good with it because you can't learn it. You can kind of like learn some of it, but at the end of the day you are intentionally not intentionally, but you are mechanically forced to miss. I don't even think anyone with the best aim ever, I don't even think an aimbot would be able to help you from not missing with Trickster. That's partly why they give him 60 knives, is because they know you are going to miss a few of them. It's not possible to hold a full combo up. The only way it's possible to hit all the knives without missing a beat is if the survivor is stood still directly in front of you or you're body blocking them. That's the only way. Because if they're making any attempt to move, you will try and hit them, you'll try and counter their movements, and then the recoil will go, oh, were you trying to counter their movements? Let me get in the way of that. And it'll, you know, you'll aim left and the recoil will throw right. It doesn't make sense to me. That went off on a bit of a tangent about the recoil there. I was supposed to be talking about the Ricochet knives and people wanting that base kit. I don't know how I feel about that. I think it would be a good move. It would give him a bit more utility. It would give you a bit more usability to your blades. You know, you wouldn't need direct line of sight anymore. However, at the same time, I feel like I wouldn't be a fan of that because I only ever played one game with the trick blades, the bouncing ones, and I spent more of that game aiming at the floor behind the survivors, trying to get the 4 bounce hits, than I did just aiming directly at them, and I felt like it was hindering my performance. I feel like that's an iffy personal complaint that, like, that's just me, and I don't think that's how other people will see it, but yeah, I don't know how I feel about the Ricochet blades being made base kit if that's what they do. I think I could learn to like it though. But yeah, those are the changes I would make to the Trickster. Those are my thoughts on him. Like I said, I think he's got really fun gameplay and I really like him now, but he's going to need some serious overhauling and changing to be done before he comes to live servers, to make him viable, because there's no way you can make him viable in his current state without doing some of these changes. I'm not saying all of them, but some of them. I think definitely the movement speed is a big one for me. I think he definitely needs that. When I was playing the PTB, the go-to add-ons I was using most of the time was the Caged Heart Shoes. I think the one that made him, I think it was his best movement speed while aiming add-on, that was that one. And the Yumi's Murder, which was the one that brings it down by 1. Combining those two add-ons, to me, if you put those base kit, maybe tweak them a little bit by just doing what I've said, like make him 115 and then slow to 110 when throwing, and make him do 6 hits to injure instead of 8. That would be fair to me. The other changes I've mentioned also would be good, but again, I don't know how you look at it. To recap, what I said I would do to change him here at the end, just sort of a TLDR, is you should make him 115 movement speed when he's just walking around normally, so you can get M1s in, but then slow him to 110 when aiming. Make it 6 hits to injure rather than 8. Make laceration an interaction that survivors can take away, like a deep wound, rather than something that ticks down over time. Or just outright remove the tick down, but I think it would be more fair if it was something survivors controlled. Massively overhaul main event. I won't go over exactly what I would do to that again, but either remove main event or massively overhaul it. And finally, if people want it, make the Ricochet Blades base, but at the end of the day, in my opinion, I think that would be something that's best left to an add-on. Just to give him more fun add-ons, to give him something that actually changes his power, because we need more add-ons like that. And 2, just because I feel like making the Ricochet Blades base would be too distracting from the actual point of the blade. You'd spend more of the game trying to bounce off things for hits than you would directly aiming for survivors. But yeah, this was just sort of my thoughts on the Trickster. Like I said, really like him. Can't wait for him to come to live servers, provided they do some changes to him. And yeah, thanks for watching.